Another return to a multicam sitcom from decades past. We just did Night Court last week. Now it's time for That 90s Show. Hey guys, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It. Welcome to my review for That 90s Show. This is, of course, the follow-up to That 70s Show, which is a show that aired in the 90s, but takes place in the 70s, and now we are about 15 years, I guess, probably or so after the finale of that show. Actually, maybe closer to 20 years. I forget when that actually went off the air, but it's been a little while, and we have a whole new cast of kids, but a lot of the adults remain the same. So before we launch into this program and my review of it, I want to welcome you into Dan Reviews It. Thank you for finding this video. We've got lots of movie and TV reviews on the channel. I was previously doing a weekly sort of roundup of new TV shows, but my schedule's changed a bit, so I think I'm going to just kind of take some of the bigger things out there and kind of tackle those in sort of longer form videos, and that's what we're going to do with this program. We just did a big Night Court review last week. That was, of course, a show from the 80s and early 90s, and now we've got That 70s Show from the 90s and early 2000s and its sequel. And both of these shows, there's a lot of similarities here because multicam sitcoms, and I talked about this in my Night Court review, are not really sort of the norm anymore. Mostly single cam stuff, but much like its predecessor, That 90s Show utilizes the laugh track. I don't think it has a live studio audience. I think it's more of canned laughter, but that's okay, because I think the original might have been that as well. But in any event, this takes place in the same place, no pun intended, because it's called Point Place, but it's Point Place, Wisconsin, and it takes place in Kitty and Red Foreman's house, by and large. Now, yeah, there's some exterior things, and we go on location a little bit, but the bulk of the show, just like the original, is taking place in the Foreman house. So in the original, of course, you had Topher Grace playing the son, Eric, and he is now all grown up. He and Donna married each other, and now they have a child who is played here by Kaylee Haverda, and I'm not really familiar with any of the youngsters on this show. Much like the original, I mean, they introduced us to Ashton Kutcher, Topher Grace, Mila Kunis, Danny Masterson, Wilmer Valderrama, Lara Prepon. The whole cast was really unknowns or little knowns. And we get the same here with the kids. So the basic premise is that Kurtwood Smith and Deborah Jo Rupp, back as Red and Kitty Foreman, are taking in for the summer Eric and Donna's daughter, Leia Foreman, which is sort of a little bit of an inside joke because Eric was such a huge Star Wars fan in the original. And in fact, in the new version, he teaches a course in Star Wars history or Star Wars literature or something. I heard the joke and it sort of went by me, but some sort of Star Wars class that he teaches. So the daughter is named Leia, and she originally was going to go to space camp for the summer with her father, but she meets a couple friends on a visit to Red and Kitty's and decides, I would really like to stay here for the whole summer, and they allow her to. So most of the series sort of takes place in that realm. Yes, Topher Grace and Lara Prepon are in the first episode. They'll probably be in the 10th episode, where they pick her up. I should make note that this is on Netflix, so you can watch all of the episodes now if you'd like. I did not do that. I watched the first 3. I figured that was a fair assessment of the show, and it's kind of what I did when I did my weekly TV news and reviews. I would only watch 2 or 3 episodes of something just to kind of give it a fair shake, more than just the one episode. So yeah, I think 3 episodes is a good sampling. I anticipate that we'll probably see them at the end of the season as well, sort of picking Leia up and seeing how the summer went. But we see a lot of other familiar faces, not just, Kitty and Red, who are sort of the stars of the show other than the children. But I won't reveal any other. Well, you know what? I will reveal one because I have a little bit of things to say about him, and that is Fez. Wilmer Valderrama reprises his role as Fez in, I think he starts maybe in the 3rd episode, maybe at the end of the 2nd one too. But he is sort of, well, I don't want to get too spoilery. I'll just say that he's in it. That's all. But in any event, I think a lot of the cast from the original you can expect to see at some point in the season, except for Danny Masterson, who has been up on rape charges for a while, and is actually an ongoing court proceedings, to this day. Even though the accusations were a few years ago, but they're just now kind of getting to the meat and potatoes of that. So I think we can expect not to see him. But in any event, I think most other people may show up at some point in the series. But so let's talk about, I guess, the good. I love a multi-camera sitcom with the laugh track or the studio audience. I talked about this last week in my Night Court review. And I think it's utilized well here. I think the show would be odd if it wasn't, because we're so used to, this house and these people having sort of that laugh track behind them. It would be a little bit odd if it wasn't there. And another thing I really love about it that Netflix doesn't always do is that this is a fairly clean show. I mean, clean in the sense that it could air on a broadcast network. Yeah, they say, I'll, stick my foot in your ass. That was always a classic Red statement. So, they have light curses like that. But, some of the other Netflix sitcoms that have been of the multicam variety, like The Ranch, which is Danny Masterson was in that with Ashton Kutcher, the Kathy Bates show about selling marijuana. I forget what that was even called. But, they just go all out, make it TVMA. But they kept this as if it was a true continuation on Fox or something of that 70s show. And I love that. It really makes it feel authentic to the original. And the length of episodes, the time, that the episodes are is about the same. They're all between sort of 22 and about 25 minutes. The first one's a little extended because there's like a 3-minute teaser at the end for here's what's happening this season on that 90s show. But the episodes are 22 minutes, 24 minutes, just like it would be if it was on a broadcast network. I like that. It gives us the feeling of that 70s show. When that original show was on, Netflix didn't exist, streaming shows didn't exist, so I love that they sort of kept it in that realm. And then, of course, probably the brightest spot of all are Deborah Jo Rupp and Kurtwood Smith reprising their roles as Kitty and Red Foreman. Absolutely fantastic. The chemistry is there. The laughs are there. Specifically, Kitty's laugh is there. That's always been a staple of the show. And I'll be honest, from that original group, they were always highlights for me. I think, the fact that it was in the Foreman house a lot of the time. Yeah, we saw some of the other adults, Donna's parents, especially because they lived right next door. And I think we saw some of the other ones throughout. I sort of forget. I mean, I'm not a diehard fan of that show, but I did watch it a lot. It started when I was in college, so I think it was Sunday nights, maybe it was on, or something. I don't remember. But anyway, whatever night it was on, we would gather at my one friend's house and we would all watch it, for a few seasons until, we all ended up graduating. But I continued to watch it. The last season got a little weird because Topher Grace, for the most part, left and Ashton Kutcher kind of left. So we had some other people filling in the gap. But Red and Kitty were always two of my absolute favorite characters. And man, is that magic back. It was so great to see that old house, the kitchen. It starts off, because it's in the 90s now, it starts off with this 90s tune, Groove is in the Heart, and Kitty comes out, from behind the fridge, and the canned audience goes wild. And I was really excited to see her, and she did not disappoint. Kurtwood Smith did not disappoint. By far the highlights of the show. So now we get to the kids. And that is where I think the show falters a bit. I will say that this girl playing Leia, and again, her name is, Callie Haverda. I really like her. I think she is a strong lead for the show. And some of the other kids are okay, too. Her good friend Gwen Ashley Ofterhide is her real name, and she plays Gwen. She, I thought, did a good job as well. Some of the other kids, though, the acting isn't great, but I think even worse, the lines are not that great either. You've got, Kelso's son is part of it. Mace Coronel plays him, Jay Kelso. And my least favorite is Ozzy, who is played by Ren Dahl. He is the gay kid. I guess because it's in 2023, they have to have a gay kid on the show. And as a gay person, look, I get it. In the 90s, I was certainly the token gay of all of the groups of friends I was in. But I'm not sure that it was necessary, especially if they're going to make him so one note and so stereotypical. I don't like his character at all, and the actor portraying him, I don't care for either. That's really all I'm going to say about that. I mean, it's just weak writing, not great acting, and very stereotypical gay stuff that I think we would have probably seen in a sitcom in the 90s. But this is a sitcom about the 90s in 2023. I don't think we need it. Either leave out the gay character entirely because, look, I know, like I said, my groups certainly had a gay kid in them, but in Point Place, Wisconsin, is there a gay kid in every group? I don't know. In the mid 90s, I'm not so sure. So you could have left that alone or at least made him some sort of a character. But that is a little bit of a problem with like half the kids, is that they're all kind of one note. And this is after 3 episodes. You'd think they would, first episode, sure, we're all getting to know everybody, so you have a couple of laugh lines. This is the one thing we know about you from the pilot. But 3 episodes in, and a lot of those characters are still sort of a bit stock, and even less exciting. They're not that great at acting. One thing that original show had in spades was tremendously talented kid actors. And I mean, most of them, I guess, were elder teenagers, or maybe even they were over 18. I know Mila Kunis wasn't. She famously lied about her age and said, I think she said she was 16, but she was really like 13 or 14 or something in that first season. So, she was really a kid. But they had such talented child or youth actors in that original show. And yeah, thinking back, I mean, I would have to rewatch it, but thinking back those first few episodes, yeah, probably the characters were a bit one note and stuff. But we grew to love them. Here we only get 10 episodes in a season because it's Netflix. So, back in the day, we got 22, 24 episodes in a season to really sink our teeth into these characters. So the writing needs to be a little sharper in that regard. And that brings me to another negative, and this is sort of my one spoiler for people that show up, but Wilmer Valderrama does reprise his role as Fez, like I mentioned. Fez was never one of my favorite characters. He was a bit one note. I mean, I think he was fairly one note most of the series. The last couple seasons, when people started leaving, they gave him more to do, and he became one of sort of the big stars, one of the main stars of the show once Topher Grace left. But I've never found him that amusing. He's always sort of been one note. Okay, there's a language barrier. Okay, you're horny. We got it. But here, and I won't say, how they bring his character in, or how they, treat his character. But the third episode is almost built entirely around him. He is the A story, almost. Well, maybe it's kind of a double A story, but anyway, he was never one of my favorite characters, and so I would have loved to see more of Eric and Donna, some of the other people, but we get a whole episode of him, and I don't really care for what they did with his character. I will say, I guess they gave him more depth than he had in the original show, but it didn't work for me. It seemed gimmicky. So in that regard, I could take or leave him being in the show. A little cameo is fine, but to give him an entire episode, it's like, all right, well, are we going to focus on the new kids here or not? And maybe the producers realize, oh, these kids don't really act all that well. Let's throw a Fez episode in there. I don't know. It didn't quite work for me, like I think maybe they were hoping. But look, they have the original creators on board here, which includes Marcy Carsey and Tom Werner, who brought us The Cosby Show and A Different World and Grace Under Fire, and a lot of sitcoms that we know and love from the 80s and 90s came from Carsey Werner. Roseanne, one of them as well. But it also has Bonnie Turner and Terry Turner involved. They co-created that original show. The feel is there, and I love what they did with the music too. Now I will say some of the music in the what do they call those, between the scenes, the little wipes or whatever, is a little 70s-ish for me still. Like, they could have made it more grungy or maybe some hip-hop. But I will say the music in the series is done by James Iha of the Smashing Pumpkins. So very, very 90s there. And they updated the theme song to make it more of like a Riot Girl kind of thing, like a Bikini Kill, with the same lyrics. Cheap Trick did the original for that 70s show, which makes sense. Huge band in the 70s. But here we have, the Riot Girl version, the grunge version of the theme. And I like that a lot too. And they still do the Hello Wisconsin thing at the end. So there's a lot of nice touches. I think a big fan of that 70s show is going to absolutely love this. For me, that 70s show was a very good show. Is it in my, top TV shows of all time? It's not. And I probably haven't gone back and watched it in about 15 years. I did watch the reruns when they were airing, in syndication or whatever. So I've seen some of those first few seasons several times. But once it went off the air, I didn't really pay it much mind. So it's not one that I go back to over and over again. So for me, I would say I'm more of like an average fan of the show. So I think this one maybe gets knocked down a little bit of a peg for that. But it is so great to see Kurtwood Smith and Deborah Jo Rupp back together. I wish there was more of them in the show, and they certainly have their moments, and most of the best scenes involve them in some way. So much like Night Court, I will leave that 90s show with a B minus. I think there's more potential for Night Court to move up. Whereas this, I think B minus is probably about where it's going to stay because of the not great youth actors here, except for, a couple of them. But I am excited to watch the rest of the season. I'm going to finish it, and I hope we get a season 2 out of it, and 3 and 4 and whatever. But yeah, that's where I stand on this one. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see everybody next time on Dan Reviews It. Bye.